So you just ate so much food, you're feeling uncomfortable, you go to Google, you type in eating disorder treatment, overeating disorder treatment, and all this stuff comes up. Here's the question. What treatment option is best for you? So that's what we're going to explore today, especially the cognitive behavioral therapy. This is one of the most popular forms of treating overeating disorders, and it's honestly one of my favorite because it's very simple and it's done individually. Instead of going back into childhood or dealing with other family, instead of focusing on relationships, it's about you. And a lot of the times, this is a great place to start because some people who have overeating, a lot of people who have overeating issues, they want to hide. They want to be, they do not want to be in a group setting. You want to, honestly, you want to avoid the fact that you do have an overeating problem. And just listening to this podcast right now is a real step in the right direction where you're searching out information that can be useful for you. So the question is, what therapy is best for me? There's all these different therapies out there. And when you think of cognitive behavioral therapy, in my opinion, this is best when you want to try something by yourself, for yourself, and it's more done in private, but also if you're having more of the problems around perfectionistic thinking, a lack of confidence, and rumination. Rumination is big. For example, one woman that I'm working with, we agreed that she would try to journal. And not like, we didn't say you had to journal. We didn't force it, right? So that's really important when you work with eating disorders, that you don't force things. Because, let's face it, if you have some sort of eating problem, overeating thing, you've probably tried dieting. In fact, dieting probably led you to overeating, to having an overeating problem. Dieting is terrible, and dieting, you have to do things. So when working with this woman, she didn't have to do overeating. We talked a lot about a compassionate attitude, how bringing awareness to her eating choices without judgment, just being able to write them down on paper and see what was going through her head, getting to understand her emotions around food, and doing this in a non-judgmental manner. And she came up with the idea. It was her idea. And so the next week comes by, and she says, I haven't written in my journal. And I take this in stride. I say, okay, like, no worries, like, no judgment. Are you okay if we explore what happened when you, what came up for you when you tried to journal? And she said that she journaled a couple days, and then she overate one day. And when she went to write in the journal, she felt I failed. I overate. I failed. Blah. Anger, frustration, humiliation, intolerable feelings of failure. And when you have intolerable feelings of failure, that's what cognitive behavioral therapy is for. There are other forms of therapy where, let's say, your body image, people comment on your body image, things like that. That's a different form of therapy. There's other ones where you're more dealing with negative emotions, like you get overwhelmed by emotions. That's dialectical behavioral therapy. There'll be a link below where if you get overwhelmed by emotions, that behavior, that type of therapy is going to be better for you. But if you deal with black and white thinking, perfectionistic thinking, feelings of failure, getting depressed and ruminating that you're a failure, that you can't do anything, that's a specific type of problem that's so good to come in for cognitive behavioral therapy. So let's explore a little bit more about what cognitive behavioral therapy is and how this woman kind of got over that stumbling block and actually made a significant progress, not just in overeating, but in life, really. So cognitive behavioral therapy, it's cognitive is mind, and then behavioral is action. So it's about the link between mind and action. And traditionally there's thoughts, feelings, and actions. So thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions. Pretty simple, right? And so what cognitive therapy does extremely well is this one specific thing where it encourages you to bring a lot of awareness to thoughts. And I'm talking a specific type of awareness. Usually it involves writing things out. So let me give an example. A very common exercise I'll give people who are working with overeating problems is to list out good foods and bad foods. Foods that they are okay with and foods that they are not okay with, or foods that they think are unhealthy, bad, forbidden, fattening, whatever. And on the list of bad foods, I ask them to write their thoughts and specifically their interpretations. So you want to bring awareness to a specific type of thinking. For example, cookies. Someone wrote down the other day, like, cookies, if I have one cookie, I'll get fat. Something like that. Like, that was their interpretation. And when they wrote that thought out and we talked about it, you could say, like, well, is one cookie going to make you fat? And the answer was, well, no, one cookie's not going to make you fat, right? Like, one cookie's not going to make you fat. And then we start questioning other food rules too. Like, well, what about chips? Is a bag of chips going to make you fat? Is one bag of chips going to make you fat? No. And we kind of lessen this black and white thinking. So now this person can eat a cookie without feeling like a total failure. This is really, really important. Perfectionistic standards are too impossible to meet. And perfectionistic standards are reinforced by types of thinking that you may not even know you're thinking. So when you're given some structure and said, write down some specific thoughts around chocolate. What are some of your thoughts around chocolate? Write them out. Literally write out these thoughts, because thinking them in your head, they're vague. When you write them out, you have a chance to challenge your thoughts. Oftentimes our thoughts are just faulty. They're binary, they're black and white, they're too simple. They're based on dieting, food rules that you learned as a kid. And anyways, in cognitive behavioral therapy, we see those thoughts. We talk about them. We explore them. We explore more ways that are actually true. It's about finding out the truth, right? We're not trying to say that cookies are healthy, no. But we are trying to take a more balanced perception of cookies, that where you can say to yourself, okay, I've had a long day. I'm going to reward myself with a couple cookies. I know that I can put them away to the side and that I can have them later. We take a more balanced approach, a more balanced mental approach with food and with our behaviors and actions. And that changes your behavior. That's the beautiful thing about this, is when you change your thoughts, it changes your behavior. In cognitive behavioral therapy, if you go on to weightlossenlightenment.com/success-stories, you can see a lot of stories there. And also, cognitive behavioral therapy is it's one of the gold star treatments for all sorts of disorders, really. All sorts of thinking disorders, which an eating disorder it's primarily a thinking disorder. A major part of it is faulty perception, seeing food as the wrong way, seeing food as evil, seeing food as bad, seeing it as a black and white thing. And when you first start cognitive behavioral therapy, there are 3 phases that we kind of go through. The first is where you just get to know the therapist. We kind of talk. We just get to know each other. The second one is part of the first is where we start to get you eating more regularly. Got to get you meal prepping. Got to get you just eating a little bit more regularly. The focus is not entirely on nutrition. Nutrition is a deep topic that brings up a lot for people. But eating more regularly is something that's achievable for many, many people. And that makes a huge difference already. There's a lot of parallels between cognitive behavioral therapy in this first step of eating more regularly and meal prepping with the second step in intuitive eating, which is honoring your hunger. I find the dialogue between cognitive behavioral therapy and intuitive eating very, very interesting. And so after you're eating more regularly and you're getting some awareness, right? You're building awareness in this first stage about your perfectionistic thinking, about guilt and shame, and you really come to this understanding. Binging and overeating is the result of deprivation. Let me repeat that again and again. I'll do it 3 more times. Binging is the result of deprivation. Overeating is the result of deprivation. Compulsive eating is the result of deprivation. And how you deprive yourself starts off with a mental thought. It starts off with a black and white thought that is restrictive. When you say to yourself, cookies are bad, I cannot have a cookie, they are fattening, the energy of that thought is restrictive. I cannot have any cookies, or else I'm a bad person. When you think that thought and you avoid those cookies, that energy of that thought causes you to feel deprivation. Now, if you do that enough times with enough foods, you're gonna feel deprived. Even if you're full, even if you're eating, you're emotionally gonna feel deprived. And you have to realize there's a difference between physical fullness and emotional, physical, whole body fullness. Whole body fullness is where you're satisfied with your food that you're taking in. You don't feel like you're leaving stuff behind. You don't feel that you're deprived, really. And when you're deprived, you have cravings. So even if you're full, physically full, when you're depriving yourself of some stuff that you really desire and want, those cravings are going to come, and you're gonna overeat. You're gonna see this cause and effect relationship in the first stage of cognitive behavioral therapy. The next stage is where we actually reprogram our thoughts. Basically, we examine them, we dive into them, we reprogram them, we challenge them, we ask if they're realistic, we explore them, we think about worst case scenarios, which aren't that bad. And basically, by getting very clear and specific, writing out the thoughts, challenging our beliefs, that process, oh my God, it is like a miracle. It is like a miracle, right? It is like a miracle. This woman that I'm thinking of right now, she, the key thing for her was seeing her thoughts of perfection. I am a failure for overeating. And once we could see, the whole thing was, let's expect failure. Let's expect failure. Let's expect failure. That's what we said. That's what we agreed upon. Let's expect failure. Let's expect that you're going to overeat. Let's expect that it's okay to overeat. Let's expect that while you build awareness of some of these patterns, you're going to overeat. You're going to feel emotions more. You're going to get overwhelmed. And does that mean you're a failure? And she said, no, it really doesn't mean I'm a failure. And she said at first she was afraid that by writing out her thoughts, these negative, dark thoughts, that they would somehow make things worse. But she said, it made things real. It made things real. Like oftentimes in our head, things aren't real. Like we have all these vague thoughts. They're fearful. They're just vague, and we're living in a state of fear, and it's hard to get out of that cloud. But when you work with someone that you trust, you explore these thoughts together. You can even do it on your own, really. Although it does help working with someone. When you get clarity on these thoughts, you realize, oh, I don't need to be afraid. I don't, and this clearing happens where your perception changes. And then after your perception changes, your behavior starts to follow as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful process. And since she started expecting failure, since she started becoming more okay with things, she has been journaling. She also noticed that, there were situations in her life where someone was making her feel guilty. And by writing out things, she was able to kind of really see, no, it's not okay for someone to make me feel guilty. It's not okay for me to allow myself this burden. It's not my burden. So basically there was these fears of confronting some of her beliefs, some of her thoughts, and once she started writing it down, she realized, no, confronting these things and challenging my perception is the most healing thing I can do. And now I can bring awareness to my eating patterns, and we're starting to make progress on bringing light to those patterns. The more light we shine into these patterns, that's like overeating is this demon shadow, right? The more light that we shine into it, the smaller the shadow goes. So that is cognitive behavioral therapy for you in a nutshell. And what I want you to do is just check out the free strategy session with me. There's a bunch of testimonials on it, and I laid out exact guidelines on what you'll get by listening to it. That's at weightlossenlightenment.com/free strategy session. Free strategy session. So just check that out. Talk with me if any of these issues are relevant with you, especially cognitive behavioral therapy ones, because that's my bread and butter. That's what I'm really, really good at helping people with. Love to talk with you and learn more about your story. So that's it for today. Stay tuned for the next episode, and go ahead and drop a like or subscribe, or just head over to weightlossenlightenment.com for more information. Peace out.